Fats Domino died yesterday at home in Louisiana. He was 89. He helped create a new style of music called rock and roll.
Bob spoke with one of the leading members of the OJs about Frankie being identified in this decades-old cold case.
Do you still remember the black music groups that once shook up the 70s names like the OJs, the Stylistics, and the Emotions had the whole of America on its feet, lost in soul, funk, and disco? But would you believe there was a chilling curse cast over those legends? Because right at the height of their stardom, a series of quiet tragedies unfolded, accidents that stole away stages, voices, and even lives without ever making the headlines. One group's van flipped just after signing a $1 million contract. Another vanished from history following a terrifying incident. So, what really happened behind the curtains? Were these heartbreaking accidents mere misfortunes? Or is there a deeper mystery that's never been uncovered? All the answers lie in today's video. Join us as we uncover the fates of 21 black music groups from the 1970s who endured the most devastating accidents ever known. 1. The Bar-Kays, the flight that never landed. And if we had to begin with one group whose tragedy struck at the very moment of their rise to fame, none were more heartbreaking than the Bar-Kays. They were young men from Memphis, just in their 20s, who had only just stepped into the spotlight with Soul Finger, a raucous, vibrant funk instrumental that needed no lyrics to bring the crowd to its feet. Within mere months in 1967, the Bar-Kays had gone from high school musicians to backing band for Otis Redding, the brightest soul star of the time. To stand behind Otis, playing on the big stage, was more than an honor. It was a dream they never even dared to dream. They hit the road with instruments, laughter, and the kinds of dreams that hadn't yet had time to grow old. But that dream came to a permanent halt one December afternoon. On the afternoon of December 10th, 1967, as the plane carrying Otis Redding and members of the Bar-Kays approached Madison, Wisconsin for landing, it suddenly lost control. Just a few kilometers from the airport, the Beechcraft H-18 plunged into a frozen Lake Monona and shattered on impact. No one had time to call for help. No last words were spoken. The crash claimed the lives of Otis Redding and 4 of the young Bar-Kays. It all happened too fast, too quietly, and far too cruelly. Out of the 8 people on board, only one survived: Ben Cauley, the group's trumpet player. When he regained consciousness, he was floating on the freezing lake, clinging to a seat cushion, his chest burning, breath short. His trumpet, the very symbol of youth and hope, lay silent beside him. In the blurred moments before the crash, Ben remembered Otis turning to him, grabbing his hand without a word. But in that look, there was something that wanted to hold on to everything. It was because Ben hadn't fastened his seatbelt that he was thrown clear of the cabin. The very mistake that should have cost him his life ended up saving it. Meanwhile, at the airport, James Alexander, the only Bar-Kays member not on the flight, having been tasked with renting a car, was waiting near the runway. When he turned around, a crowd had gathered at the glass, pointing toward the lake. He followed their gaze and saw a black plume of smoke rising from the icy water. He didn't yet know what had happened, but something in his gut told him he had just lost everyone he loved. 3 days before the crash, Otis had just finished recording Sittin' on the Dock of the Bay. When the song was released, it wasn't just music, it was a farewell, a quiet song from the other side. It also became the first posthumous hit in music history. In the wake of the tragedy, the Bar-Kays disbanded. It took James years before he rebuilt the group with new members. But on stage, he always left one spot empty, one that no one was ever allowed to fill. 2. Boogie Nights, the crash that changed everything. If the Bar-Kays fell from the sky while on tour, then Heatwave's accident was different, but just as haunting. When Boogie Nights lit up every dance floor in America in 1977 and Always and Forever became a must-play at every black wedding, no one imagined that just 2 years later, the soul of Heatwave would be forced to write music with his chin. Johnny Wilder Jr., the group's sweet-voiced frontman and spiritual leader, often compared to a young Marvin Gaye, would never stand again after a devastating crash in February 1979. That day, after a show in Dayton, Ohio, Johnny was driving his brother and girlfriend home. At the intersection of 3rd and Main Street, a delivery truck ran a red light and slammed into the driver's side at nearly 55 mph. The impact knocked Johnny unconscious, severely damaged his cervical spine, and left his nervous system paralyzed. He was rushed to the ICU in a vegetative state. When he awoke, he had no feeling in his arms or legs. He couldn't move anything below the neck. The doctors said it bluntly, "You'll never walk again, and you may never sing." But instead of despairing, Johnny asked just one thing: "Can I still sing?" The room fell silent. Though paralyzed from the neck down, Johnny Wilder Jr. continued to write music with his chin, tapping notes with his lips, recording songs with faint breaths just to live inside the music. For the next 27 years, he refused replacements, lived in seclusion, and died in 2006, leaving behind 2 songs he never got to record. They still sit quietly on his desk like a melody cut off midlife. 3. The Sequence, One Last Hit, and a Silent Coffin. The Sequence was the first all-black female group to put hip-hop on U.S. radio, but their story closed with a blood-stained night and no chance to say goodbye. In March 2025, Angie Stone, the powerful voice of The Sequence, performed at a tribute to pioneering women in Atlanta. At 63, she still carried that fierce stage presence, a husky voice, and the gaze of someone who had lived through spotlight and shadows. That night, she sang "Funk You Up the Track" that made The Sequence the first female hip-hop group to hit Billboard in 1980. After the show, she got into a car to leave downtown. At the intersection of Cascade Road and Benjamin E. Mays Drive, an SUV ran a red light and struck the passenger side where Angie was sitting. The impact spun the car, which crashed into a lamppost. She was trapped, unconscious, her head resting against the shattered glass. It took rescue crews nearly 20 minutes to get her out. Despite emergency surgery at Grady Memorial, Angie died at 3:42 a.m. from a ruptured aorta and severe chest trauma. The hip-hop world was shaken. Her fellow Sequence members, Cheryl the Pearl Cook and Gwendolyn Blondie Chisholm, wept over her casket at the funeral. On top of it, someone placed a vinyl of Funk You Up and an old black and white photo of the three. No one talked about a reunion. No one mentioned a legacy. Angie's death was the final note of a group that once opened an entire chapter of hip-hop and left behind a silence time could never fill. 4. Fats Domino Band, the crash that cut through the era of black rock. As the band behind one of rock and roll's greatest icons, the Fats Domino Band was the living soul of legendary hits like Blueberry Hill, Ain't That a Shame, and I'm Walkin'. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, they toured extensively with Fats Domino, becoming a symbol of harmony, loyalty, and deeply emotional performances. Then, on the night of September 18, 1970, a tragedy suddenly cut everything short. After a performance in Baton Rouge, 6 band members boarded a van to return to Slidell. It was raining, the roads were slippery, and visibility was poor. As the van approached a curve on Highway 190, a truck crossed the lane and crashed head-on into the van. The violent collision shattered the vehicle, and the music fell silent in an instant. Clarence "Sonny" Fields, the veteran saxophonist, died on the spot. His bent saxophone remained nestled against his chest. 3 other members were seriously injured. Fats Domino, traveling separately due to an interview schedule, upon hearing the news, could only hold his head in silence for hours. Later, he could never speak a full sentence about Sonny without choking up. On September 23rd, Sonny was buried in New Orleans, alongside his broken saxophone. From then on, the band continued to perform, but the music was never the same. Each night, the right side of the stage remained empty, as if the group was still waiting for someone who would never return. 5. KC and the Sunshine Band. Tragedy from the cold sound of a bulldozer. As a disco funk icon of the 1970s, Casey and the Sunshine Band made the world groove with hits like Get Down Tonight, That's the Way I Like It, and many others that lit up dance floors across the black community. Behind the vibrant horns and lively vocals was the fast, crisp guitar accompaniment of Jerome Smith, the group's silent funk soul. But then, on July 28, 2000, Jerome died at a construction site in West Palm Beach, Florida. He fell from the cabin of a bulldozer he was operating and was crushed by its heavy wheels, dying instantly at the age of 47. A guitarist who once shook the 1970s passed away like an anonymous laborer. More heartbreakingly, it wasn't just an accident, it was the result of a series of injustices. After years of disputes over royalties with the record label, Jerome had to leave the group and received no share from reissued album revenues. 6 months before his death, he sent a letter requesting medical assistance, but no one responded. When his body was identified, his occupation was listed simply as manual laborer. Jerome's death shocked the band. They stopped performing for nearly 2 years. In subsequent shows, Jerome's guitar solos from old recordings were always preserved. No one dared to replace them. The group never regained its former glory. And many believe that since Jerome's fall, Casey and the Sunshine Band also lost its true heartbeat. 6. The Temptations, the bullet without an explanation. The Temptations are one of the most legendary black soul groups of all time, having created the Motown symbols with My Girl, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, and Papa Was a Rollin' Stone. They had a synchronized style like the military, with choreography as sharp as a blade. Among those powerful voices, Paul Williams stood out as a co-founder with a warm baritone voice. He was the heartbeat that kept the group steady. However, on August 17, 1973, Paul was found dead in his car at a deserted parking lot in Detroit. There was a gunshot wound to his head. With a gun and a half-empty bottle of liquor beside him, police ruled it a suicide, but the scene left too many unanswered questions. Why were there no clear fingerprints on the gun? Why was there no suicide note? And why did someone who laid the foundation for the Temptations end his life in such solitude? The deeper reasons made the incident even more heartbreaking. Paul had been cut from performance contracts due to deteriorating health and worsening alcoholism. Despite being a founding member, he didn't receive equal royalties as his bandmates. At the time of his death, he lived in a rented house in a poor area of East Detroit and was trying to sell the recording of Feel Like Givin' Up to pay his wife's medical bills. After Paul's death, the group never regained the golden lineup that made history. In the hearts of Motown fans, Paul was not just the rhythm keeper, but a silent sacrificer with a tragic end. 7. The Dramatics, the contract that was never fulfilled. The Dramatics were once the sole symbol of sorrow with In the Rain and What You See Is What You Get, delivering multi-layered, haunting male vocals. But on a rainy July night in 1975, as their career soared, an unexpected accident forever altered the group's destiny. That evening, the band's bus left Indianapolis, heading to Chicago for the most anticipated summer show. Rain poured relentlessly, mountain roads were slippery, and the driver, only a few weeks into the job, failed to control the vehicle when it lost traction. The bus skidded sideways, tipped into a ditch, and crashed into a roadside concrete pillar. Inside the bus, darkness and panic ensued. L.J. Reynolds, the harmony soul of the group, suffered chest injuries and couldn't hit high notes for nearly 2 years. Willie Ford broke his hip and was wheelchair-bound for an extended period. Their manager remained in a coma for weeks. No one died. But for the Dramatics, a part of their voice, memories, and youth remained trapped in that night. More heartbreakingly, just hours before the accident, the group had signed a performance contract with Isaac Hayes worth over $100,000, a dream they'd chased for 7 years. After the accident, the record label indefinitely postponed the album release. Media coverage was non-existent, and the group halted all activities. It wasn't until 3 years later that they returned to the stage. But discerning fans noticed that their voices were never quite the same. 8. the Dells, the man who came back to life in a body bag. In the 70s, though no longer topping the charts, the Dells remained a significant name among middle-aged black audiences across America's Midwest. They sang from the heart, with poignant lyrics about love and separation. However, on a cold, rainy March night in 1970, their journey nearly ended due to an unforeseen accident and an unforgivable oversight. Around 3:07 a.m. on March 12th, after a show in Milwaukee, the group's bus crashed into an icy barrier on I-94. The vehicle lost control and tipped over in the darkness. Sound equipment fell, crushing the rear seats. The driver died. 3 members were severely injured. Rescue teams arrived nearly 40 minutes later too late, too slow, simply because the accident occurred in a predominantly black area that received little priority. Michael McGill, the group's bass voice, was pulled from the wreckage. He was unresponsive, with no pulse. A white intern doctor quickly declared him dead, skipping thorough checks. McGill was placed in a body bag and sent to the morgue, but 5 hours later, when a nurse opened the bag to match dental records, he suddenly took a deep breath. McGill was alive, but couldn't remember who he was for the next 3 weeks. After the accident, the Dells postponed all tours for 5 years. They never returned to Milwaukee. Subsequent contracts always included a clause, "Only use familiar drivers." They rarely spoke of that night, but everyone understood some survivals aren't just luck, they're a form of resistance, a statement that black lives cannot be forgotten even while they're still breathing. 9. The OJs, the broken mirror backstage. In 1973, when Backstabbers topped the Billboard charts and Love Train became a call for black hope, the OJs believed they could control everything. They drove themselves on tours, no driver, no assistant, no manager accompanying them. However, on the night of September 14th, as the car descended a slope on Interstate 76 amid drizzle, a loss of control changed everything. The car spun sideways, tipped over, and slid nearly 80 meters on the wet road. In that chaotic moment, William Powell was trapped between 2 seat frames, unable to move, while Walter Williams hit his head on the car window and lost consciousness. Eddie Levert was the only one uninjured, stepping out of the car silently but carrying a burden he could never shake off. Because the driver at the time of the accident was Eddie, he had swapped seats to drive for fun, but after the accident, the record label immediately asked the police to record an unidentified technician as the driver to protect the image of someone who had just signed a $500,000 contract with CBS. Eddie never admitted nor denied this. It's only known that since then, he never drove again and always sat in the back seat on every journey. William Powell survived, but his voice never returned to its former glory. He often forgot lyrics, couldn't hit high notes, and quietly sat behind the stage curtain, only singing backup from afar. In 1977, when he died of cancer, the group still performed that night in Baltimore. There was no public farewell, no moment of silence. But before the show, Eddie Levert stood for a long time in front of the dressing room mirror, then punched it, shattering it. And from that moment, people knew that some pains would haunt a person for a lifetime. 10. The Spinners, the fall from a 9-foot height. In 1974, as I'll Be Around and Then Came You lifted the Spinners into the top ranks of America's soul groups. They were more than music, they were living legends. But one night in late October at the Spectrum Theater in Philadelphia, that glory vanished with a crash no one would forget, while performing one-of-a-kind Love Affair. Lead singer Bobby Smith stepped backward in a familiar dance routine. None of the members knew the rear stage platform had been removed for lighting setup. Bobby misstepped and fell straight down a 9-foot pit, no scream, just a dry thud and silence. The music kept playing for about 10 seconds as no one realized what had happened. When Eddie and the others rushed over, Bobby was unconscious, his spine severely damaged, his right leg numb. He was rushed to the ER with major trauma. Spent over 6 weeks in the hospital and nearly a year in physical therapy. Even more shocking, the event organizers refused to pay his medical bills, claiming the accident fell outside stage liability. The Spinners were forced to cancel the remaining 17 tour dates, losing nearly $200,000. But the biggest loss was Bobby. Though he recovered, he never hit those soaring notes again and needed assistance just to walk down steps on stage. From that night on, whenever the lights came down, the group always glanced behind them as if that fall was still hovering in the air, not yet resigned to the past. 11. The Chai Lights, a cheap rental, and a voice shattered like glass. At their peak in the mid-70s, the Chai Lights were Chicago soul royalty, with Have You Seen Her echoing across Midwest radio. But fame couldn't shield them from a fateful crash in November 1976. On the road to Cleveland, a cheap rental van lacking official plates slid across I-71 in cold rain. It flipped, throwing Marshall Thompson from the front seat. His head slammed against the windshield. A shard of glass sliced across his right eye, permanently reducing his vision by 40%. Worse, insurance refused coverage due to incomplete vehicle documentation. The group had to cancel 12 shows and personally absorb over $70,000 in medical costs. From then on, Marshall wore dark glasses not for style, but to hide the eye that always wept. Every time he sang, "Have You Seen Her?" he couldn't even see the audience he was calling for. 12. Earth, Wind and Fire. The falling lights and a mic never cleaned of blood. Earth. Wind and Fire weren't just funk legends. They pioneered airborne stages and complex lighting designs. But at a Denver concert in June 1975, that innovation nearly cost them their voice. Just as the group launched into Shining Star, an 18-key light fixture fell from the ceiling, smashing onto Philip Bailey's left shoulder. The music halted. The crowd screamed. Blood soaked the gold microphone in his hand. After surgery, Bailey had to relearn how to lift his arm. To this day, he can't raise his left hand above shoulder level. Since then, every concert has had a dedicated mic holder, hidden side stage. That gold mic, still stained with blood, sits untouched in the studio. Maurice White once said, "We kept the wound to remind us our voice was nearly taken, not by time, but by falling light." 13. The Isley Brothers, The Rollover and The Will Written in Silence. As the R&B rock soul of the 1970s, the Isley Brothers were used to long tours, but in May 1979, while crossing Tennessee in their RV, a swerve to avoid a deer sent the vehicle rolling 3 times on a remote mountain pass. Marvin Isley fractured a vertebra and had to wear a brace for 8 weeks, but the heartbreak came from his older brother. That night, beside Marvin's hospital bed, Ronald Isley quietly wrote a will, splitting all band profits among the 6 members because doctors said Marvin might never walk again. Marvin survived, but never sat next to a window in a vehicle again. On every tour afterward, Ronald carried that folded will, not out of fear of death, but as a reminder some things music can't protect you from, unless family speaks up. 14. The Commodores, a misstep in a hand that never touched the keys again. No one thought a single misstep could divide a band, but that's exactly what happened to the Commodores in July 1978, just after 3 Times a Lady topped the Billboard charts. During a stage transition in Texas, keyboardist Milan Williams stepped off an unfinished platform, falling 1.4 meters onto jagged iron flooring. His wrist shattered, ligaments torn, blood staining the stage. Though he underwent emergency surgery with 54 stitches, his hand never fully healed. Milan could no longer solo or keep rhythm. When Lionel Richie launched his solo career, Milan quietly left the band, no farewell party, no press release. In a rare later interview, he said, "They called it an accident, but to me, it was a signatureless goodbye." 15. The Manhattans, the fall that derailed a tour. The Manhattans, legendary for soulful ballads like Kiss and Say Goodbye, had a stage presence as elegant as a slow-motion black and white film. But one August night in 1976 in Cleveland, the unexpected struck. As they began Shining Star, a newly installed fog machine malfunctioned, spewing a thick mist across the edge of the stage. On the lyric, "This has got to be the saddest day." Lead singer Gerald Alston stepped into the clouded void and fell nearly 2 meters into a tech pit. He lay unconscious under stage lights and music, with the audience believing it was part of the act. Gerald suffered a mild head injury and lost all stage confidence. He didn't perform for 8 months. The band canceled nearly 20 shows. Ever since, the Manhattan's writer stated, "No fog, no haze, just clean golden light." One artificial mist left a very real scar on their career. 16. The Stylistics, a burnt suit and a lingering shadow. If the Manhattans bore fog-induced trauma, then the Stylistics were undone by rain and bad luck just when joy had finally returned after years of struggle. This romantic soul group from Philadelphia, known for Russell Tompkins Jr.'s ethereal falsetto, once melted hearts with "You Make Me Feel Brand New" and "Betcha by Golly." Wow. But during a 1977 interstate tour, their van spun on a rain-slicked highway and slammed into a guardrail. One member suffered a cracked pelvis. The rest were trapped for over 30 minutes before help arrived. No one died, but morale shattered when their first new suits, bought after 5 years of sharing, were burned by a fallen amp. It was a sign, no matter how hard they tried, they were always on the edge of the spotlight. The tour was canceled, their label slashed the promo budget, and the group quietly pulled out of the U.S. market. That accident became an unspoken wound, never mentioned in interviews. 17. The Delfonics, a swerve to dodge paparazzi. The Delfonics, Philly's top soul pop group, enchanted fans with "La La Means I Love You" and "Didn't I Blow Your Mind This Time?" Nicknamed the Black Beatles, they had unmatched taste and tenderness. But after a September 1977 concert at the Spectrum Arena, everything nearly fell apart. As the crowd cheered their exit, 2 paparazzi on motorbikes tailed them. On the Benjamin Franklin Bridge, under drizzle and headlight glare, their driver swerved to avoid a collision. Their 7-seat van skidded right, slammed the guardrail, and stopped just 80 centimeters from falling into the river. Wilbert Hart was thrown forward, fracturing his collarbone and splitting his forehead, blood soaking his still untouched performance outfit. The group suspended touring and enforced a gag order for 6 months. Since then, the Delfonics never left nighttime events without a police escort. A silent turning point and one that dimmed the glow forever. 18. The Ohio Players, 90 Minutes in the Dark. Funk Firebrands, the Ohio Players, creators of Fire and Love roller coaster, were known for bold sounds and even bolder shows, sweaty and electrified. But in a winter night in 1974, they faced their coldest moment literally. Before a gig near the Met Center in Minneapolis, 3 members boarded an elevator to the green room. At that exact moment, a blizzard snapped power lines. Temperatures were 2 degrees. Ventilation died. The elevator froze in pitch black. They were trapped for 90 minutes. Staff assumed they'd used a back exit. Clarence Satchel reportedly passed out from oxygen loss and required 3 days in isolation afterward. It was one of the few times the Ohio Players canceled a show last minute. From then on, they avoided old hotel elevators and brought their own tour monitor, proof it wasn't fire, but cold. That truly stopped them. 19. The Main Ingredient, a detour from television glory. The Main Ingredient touched soul heights with Everybody Plays the Fool in 1972, but a year later, a rainy night diverted their rise. On November 22, 1973, after rehearsal at Count Basie Theater in New Jersey, they drove toward their next gig in Newark. On Route 35 near Sayreville, heavy rain blurred visibility. A military truck swerved from a side lane without signaling. Their brown Dodge slid into a ditch and flipped. No one died, but lead singer Tony Sylvester took a hard hit to the neck, developing chronic nerve pain that sidelined him for 3 months. The military truck fled. The incident was handled internally due to the driver's active duty status. No compensation was given. Worse, they missed their November 25th Radio City Music Hall show and a CBS TV deal for spring 1974. Within the group, they later called it The Rain That Stole Our Leap. 20. The Emotions, a stage accident and an unprecedented demand. The Emotions, famed for femininity and Best of My Love, endured a hidden injury that only surfaced years later. On June 14, 1975, at Baton Rouge Municipal Theater, Louisiana, the group appeared in flowing white silk gowns like goddesses. After opening with So I Can Love You, a side stage platform collapsed. A 20 Kia Fresnel light from 4 meters above crashed onto Sheila Hutchinson's right shoulder. Her shoulder cracked, but because the summer tour was prepaid, she performed through it on painkillers. All choreography was adjusted or cut to mask the injury. Not until July 1976 did Jet magazine reveal it in a backstage interview. Afterward, the Emotions demanded their own stage engineer and banned prefab rigs, a first for any female soul funk act. 21. The Pointer Sisters, a chance that never came back. Known for flamboyance and genre hopping from jazz to disco, the Pointer Sisters suffered a Sunday morning that scarred their ascent. On March 5, 1978, they headed to the Oakland Black Family Benefit Concert, a charity event for underprivileged black children. At East 14th Street and 66th Avenue, a fire truck from Station 18 made a sharp U-turn for an emergency call. Their hired driver couldn't brake in time. The vehicles barely collided, but Ruth Pointer, unbelted in the front seat, slammed into the windshield. Her left cheek split open 6 stitches. She missed 2 weeks of shows. They forfeited a March 10th Soul Train taping expected to be their biggest media push of the year. Since then, they only traveled with trusted drivers or family behind the wheel, always double-checking insurance policies and actively supporting organizations that protect black artists during long-distance tours. That accident didn't just change how they moved, it taught them that black performers must look out for their own safety before tragedy strikes. We've just journeyed through 21 nearly forgotten stories, accidents that didn't just scar bodies, but etched themselves into the memory of a generation. If a group's story moved you, or one moment still haunts you, share your thoughts below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to uncover more truths still hidden behind the stage lights.